All right, we got Kevin and Scott.
Kovacs, on my it says 5 people are waiting.
I got it. Yeah, I just added them.
Okay, good.
All right.
Go ahead,
Getting
Jeff.
exclusive now, putting people in the waiting room.
Yeah.
It's like the timeout.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Welcome to Mountain Time at 5. We
Are you on this call?
are here for an exciting philosophy
If you want to be.
of the nature of independence. It's going to be fantastic. We've got some really exciting activities coming up next week, including an exclusive interview with our own Scott LaBar, an origami lesson, another workout Wednesday. We're going to have a great week, so stay tuned with us, and I'm going to turn it over to Maureen for some more opening announcements.
Hi, everybody. Just my regular reminder that if you need a place to call or email about COVID-19 or you have suggestions for us or you want to become a member, you can call 303-778-1130, extension 219, or email assistance@nfbco.org. That's assistance@nfbco.org. And thank you for everybody joining us and spending your beginning of your Friday evening with us. I'm very much looking forward to this discussion, and I'm going to turn it over to Scott.
Well, thank you, Maureen, and I appreciate the fact that we're finishing this.
Week 9.
Well, this is just we're going to start week 10. Well, anyway, 9, 10, 11. And I just want to say how much I appreciate my Federation family. I'm looking forward to this discussion. I got to tell you, it's been a rough afternoon. I've been working on a couple of cases where the discrimination against blind people is blatant. And, you know, I just thought we'd still be having to do this in 2020 when we passed the ADA 30 years ago. That actually could be a topic on one of these calls, Maureen and Kevin and Jess, talking about where we've come in 30 years.
Where are we coming? Where are we still
made a lot of progress, and one could argue that maybe we haven't. So I'm looking forward to this philosophy discussion. Stay safe, everybody, healthy. Have a great weekend.
Thanks,
Right.
Scott.
Thank you.
Kevin.
Take it away, Worley.
Okay, everyone. This is going to be more of a discussion than a lecture. So, Scott, keep your hand on the raise hand and the unmute button, and that goes for all of you. The first thing I would say, and I know Scott really believes this in his heart, but after a frustrating afternoon of fighting discrimination, it's easy to sort of have at least a few minutes of doom and gloom. We certainly have come a long way, but the law is still, even though it's there, guys like Scott and the National Federation of the Blind continue to have to fight for us. So let's say, I don't know how many of you have actually read the Dr. Jernigan piece, Blindness, the Nature of Independence. And I read it again this afternoon. Just a few aesthetic things that I noticed. And I noticed it when we went back a couple of weeks ago and read or listened to, in many cases. Some people would just listen to the text. I prefer to go and listen to Dr. Jernigan delivery. So I enjoy that a lot. It's a blast from the past for me. But what I noticed in 93, when Nature of Independence was delivered at the banquet, as I noticed back in the other literature, if you go back 20, 30 years before that, how things were slower. Things were slower. It had a whole different ambience, and it was like watching an old movie. And then you go to 93, and it's a little faster, a little faster. If you go back and listen to President Riccobono, and I think his speech, particularly the banquet before last, was pretty amazing about technology and a wonderful speech. But I just noticed that from a sort of an ambient standpoint. Okay, so, and I also would observe before we start that or as we begin, we're already started, I would observe that for me, the Nature of Independence clarified a philosophy that was already there. It's almost like he had to say, look, guys, just because we're talking about blindness as a characteristic and much less a handicap if you will take the right steps. And just as we're talking about security, equality, opportunity, and our civil rights work, and asking blind people, exhorting us, nurturing us to step up to a higher expectation, that didn't mean that we didn't already understand the nature of independence. It's just, for me, he had to sort of restate it because, if you read the speech, students at the Louisiana STEP program were asking some critical questions. The other thing I would observe, and then get ready to throw your 2 cents worth in, is that I've always quoted the line in the speech. I've always said, independence is going where you want, when you want, with little inconvenience to yourself or others. And what he says is without inconvenience to yourself and others. So it's a little more nuanced, I think. Anyway, so all right, let's see if folks who have read the speech want to help with this a little bit, because I don't want to lecture. I'm certainly, you guys know me, I'll definitely give my opinion. Kev, do we have any observations to start this?
If anybody wants to raise their hand, if you dialed in, *9. If you're on the computer, Alt-Y. And if you're on the app, it's under the participants list down at the bottom.
And I did hear Curtis Chong's voice on here, and I heard Scott's, and I know that they have, they always do, and I'm glad about that. I know they will have perspective. What do we have, Kev?
Let's see. It's not showing any hands yet.
If you don't have any, I'm certainly happy to launch into more.
Oh, here we go. They're starting to pop up now.
All right, all right.
That's what I was going to say. I can always talk.
All right, phone number 9809.
Go ahead, 9809.
Hey guys, it's Darian. How y'all doing?
Hey, Darren, glad you're here.
Glad to be here. Thinking back on that, I think about thinking back on that speech and reading it. I think about when I first became a member of the organization, and what I noticed, or what I felt at the time, was what I saw was what I saw. I saw people using canes and reading Braille, and this was the only thing that there was. Going to training, and that was the only thing that there was, is what I realized, or what I thought I saw at the beginning, what I observed in the beginning. And depending on who I talked to, maybe I didn't feel like I could ask critical questions. The nature of independence was a really good example of, you can ask our leaders these thoughtful questions because it's important. We have to, with any sort of philosophy, any sort of assertion, it has to be challenged. We have to either challenge it so we can understand it better, or challenge it and kind of push up against it and go, okay, does that square? Does that make sense of where we're going? So I think I generally want to speak to the idea that it's important that we challenge things. It's important that we speak to what doesn't feel like it makes sense, to try to get an understanding, because otherwise they're words that don't square, that don't make sense. And I feel like we just need to have that discussion.
I absolutely agree with you 100%. I think that was another value of the speech. That, well, here, there are 2 values, well, 3 values that I have of the speech. One is that notion that you have articulated very well, Darian, that you got any organization, the members and all of us have to be willing to challenge our beliefs. You can't say something in 94 and say, well, it's completely and totally what they said in 94. You can't do that. So I love that.
We've got Sharon. You can hit unmute, Sharon. It's not letting me. There it goes.
Hello, can you hear me?
There you go.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, good. Yeah, I was actually, it's one of my first Zoom meetings, and I was trying to get on here. Yes, are we going to play Dr. Jernigan's speech?
No.
Oh, okay. We're just going to discuss it.
Yeah, we shared it before, and then.
Because it's 47 minutes.
Oh, 47 minutes. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, that's why I sent the link for people to read it. But we'll I think be able to outline it enough through the discussion that the discussion itself of the topic of the nature of independence, I think, is worth having. I want to, before you take another call though, Kev, I just want to say that I think I totally agree with Darian, and I think that the other thing about the speech in '93 was to emphasize the notion that folks ought to feel free to reach out to our leaders and our fellow members to say, hey, does that ring true? And the fact that Dr. Jernigan, who in my view is the Martin Luther King of blind people, and that's I've always thought of him that way, with that kind of elegance, that kind of eloquence, that kind of thoughtfulness, and the fact that he's willing to man the barricade and believe what he believes for us. That's sort of the same thing for blind people, and I mean that most sincerely. But what he was saying is, yeah, I mean, if it doesn't square, come on, bring your letters, bring your thoughts. Okay, who's next?
We got Michael Smith.
Oh, great. Hey, Mike.
Hello.
Hi.
Actually, this is like I was here I think I was here, I can't remember. I think it was Monday for my Blind Mondays and stuff like that. But I actually, in response to Darian, like, I understand what he's saying, I do. But, like, I guess this is like a fear that I have, is because I live in Phoenix, Arizona, and I'm not saying anything negative about my Federation family or my affiliate, but sometimes I feel like that if I were to bring an observation I have up to my leaders, or bring something that I have, that they would either try to tell me no, it's okay, or, you know, or they wouldn't listen at all. And then you're kind of feeling like you basically don't matter. Does that kind of make sense?
Sure. And there are a couple ways. First of all, it's how you approach colleagues, bosses, leaders, buddies. Doesn't really matter if they're leaders. That's important. But knowing you, I have a notion that you're going to approach folks with respect, and you clearly are interested. I would just say that if you really feel that way, get a colleague, a mentor. I'm certainly willing to visit with you and say, hey, I think, I'm not saying you're wrong, but I'm saying most of the leaders in the Federation I know are very approachable. But if they aren't, find someone who is. Jessica and Maureen are very approachable. I'm sure 19 of the 20 people on this call are approachable. What, Jess?
I said I'm not. I'm just joking.
No. Oh yeah, those girls. Yeah, they're the devil incarnate. So anyway, there are a lot of people who are approachable, and we want you to feel like you can say what you need to say. So thank you for bringing it up, because there have been people who've thought that in the past, and I think that is related to Darian's comment. I wish it wasn't that way. People didn't feel that way. But you know what? I've been in Lions Club, I've been in Homeless Alliance, and oftentimes there's this notion that the troops on the ground that are really getting it done, that the leaders don't really get it. I think in the Federation, you can feel that way, but I think our leaders do really get it. And we're so blessed to have President Rick Abona today, in my view. Who else do we have, Kev?
Beecham, can I just make a quick remark?
Yeah, please.
To just say that, you know, sometimes I know for myself, the first time I ever went to a chapter meeting, I didn't find a group that I clicked with. And so sometimes it takes also finding the right group. And so, you know, like Kevin said, finding a mentor or finding national divisions to get involved with, or other like-minded groups of people, you know, just whatever you do, stay around.
Yeah, that's a really good point. There's not just one way to enter the Federation family, right? So there are the divisions, there's the chat. I've been in divisions before, guys. I mean, chapters before where, I've either been in or organized dozens of chapters. And sometimes I'm in a chapter where I'm, oh man, these guys, what do I am? But I never leave, because I know I can be part of the change. Who else do we have, Kev?
Marianne.
Hey, there she is from New York, New York.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And actually, I am one of those people that did join the Federation with a division first. I joined the Blind Merchants Division before I was ever part of any chapter. And I found great mentors there that actually brought me the rest of the way into the Federation. Probably some people regret that, but you know, I'm here anyway, so
you're welcome.
This is the deal.
You're welcome.
And to his point, and it goes back to Darian, it goes back to the whole nature of independence and the freedom to ask the question. I remember being at a leadership with, it was a bunch of New York folks all having a big leadership retreat together and such. And I remember I and a couple of other people had some concerns, and we asked if we might speak to Dr. Maurer privately as a small group. And we went into the conference room before everybody else, and he, actually, I think we were in his office that time, which was really kind of different because the conference room was laid out with blueprints for the new building. But we were able to talk to him about concerns we had with our leadership and so on, and express our opinions and so on. And he said flat out, don't you worry about it. I'm going to help you with this. I will never ask anyone to do something that I won't do.
Right.
And I'm going to make sure that my leadership understands exactly the same thing, and so on and so forth. And he truly supported us. And I know for a fact that President Riccobono is the same way. I remember even debating guide dog issues with Dr. Jernigan long ago, and having him say, I'm really glad that you feel a need to speak your piece and that you have good arguments and so on and so forth. And I think, truthfully, that the nature of independence really is being able to do something in a good way, in a sensible way, and to be respected for it. I was thinking about the whole nature of independence thing today, and I was like, well, I'm going to go to the grocery store. And whether I get help from a sighted person in the store, whether I get help from an IRA agent, whether I get help from a stranger on the street, no matter what, I'm going to go get my own groceries. I'm going to do it my own way. And that truly is the nature of independence. If somebody else needed to get their groceries and do it a different way, I think the nature of independence is about choice. It's about having the tools that you can make your own choice in your own way at a given moment. At one moment, you might need sighted guide. At another moment, you can figure it out for yourself. But it's all about having the tools so that when it's time to make a choice, you do have a choice to make, and that somebody hasn't made it for you. And I really think that in the end, that's exactly what Dr. Jernigan was saying. You need to have your own tools so that you can make your own choice.
That's one of the things he was saying. And thank you, Marianne, on both points about engaging our leadership. That's huge. But he was in fact saying that, in my view. And, one of the points he made that I thought was, I had lost this in the mists of time. I had lost the fact that he also said, look, you could go sighted guide, you can use a cane, you can use a dog, but what you shouldn't do is decide that you're not going to go. Mm-hmm. Right. So what you should not do. He was talking about going through the room, a crowded banquet room. He's saying, does it make sense for you to trap through the chair? I'm paraphrasing wildly. Does it make sense for you to trap through the chairs with a cane to show you're independent? Or while some waiters or service or whatever said this way, that way, this way, or does it make sense to grab an arm? Of course, he didn't know about COVID-19 in 1993. But the fact is, what he was saying is the thing is, don't allow yourself not to go. Go somehow. So Marianne, I think that's absolutely right. What else do you have, Kev, man?
Maureen.
Hey, everyone. So I just wanted to share how much this speech really helped me. So this is absolutely one of my very, very favorite speeches. And it has really helped me to accept and frame how independence also changes. And it is not up to us to look at someone else and determine what is right or wrong for them. Through, my journey as a blind person, many of you on here know I've had many, many, many medical challenges, and that has made things look different for me in many different situations. And this speech it helps me to accept that I can go anywhere that I want to, in any way that I need to. And most importantly, like you said, Kevin, I'm going to still go. And so It doesn't matter what that may look like for me. And so let me just share, at this state convention, our past state convention in October, I was struggling. I was waiting to go into brain surgery until my semester was over. So by October, I was scheduled to go in December. I was having horrible headaches, dizziness, tons of nausea. And I was at all the meetings and such, but there were times where I was really struggling, and I would take Jess's arm and she would help me out of a meeting or help me back out to my room. And I have a guide dog, but it was just simply because I couldn't focus. And somebody may have looked and said, well, what's Maureen doing? Why is she going with Jessica? Not knowing that there I was, 2 months waiting for my brain surgery. And that just taught me I'm never in a position to look at someone else and determine what they're doing is right or wrong and how they're getting there. Because independence just looks different for everyone at different times.
Yeah, that is such a salient point. And I think that most of us who grow older really recognize that. I can't do the things that I could do with the physical characteristics that I had at 20. Then I can do, I can't do some of those things anymore because I'm 64. Also, blindness is not the only characteristic. A lot of people think, if you do this or don't do that, it's always, oh, well, he's blind. No, I have extraordinarily high anxiety. High anxiety that's under control through medication, meditation, and a loving, giving crew of people who know how to deal with my wackiness. But a lot of stuff, it's not blindness that I didn't want to go to that job interview in 1988, maybe. It had nothing to do with blind. It had to do with the fact that I was freaking out for some reason. So we all have lives. The thing that the speech I wish had done a little more is resonate with some folks who like and still like occasionally to criticize our philosophy. I wish people would understand that it is an inclusive philosophy. It is all about a belief in ourselves as blind people. Julie Deednoy says that as the executive director of the Colorado Center for the Blind. And we had the discussion only a few months ago in the Blind Coloradan on our Colorado Talk, and then earlier on a Philosophy Friday, when someone said, you guys don't really believe you can live the life you want. You only believe that you can live the life you want if you're successful like Scott Labar and Maureen and Curtis Chong and whatever. We're all on these calls, and we believe we want to help everybody live the life they want, not the life I want them to live. I just want to give them the tools, the techniques, the philosophy, the friendship, and the love to let them be them. Who else do we have, Kev?
We got phone number 0965.
Hi there.
Good evening from Georgia. How are you?
Great.
Good. Who's that?
My name is Ricardo Aranda.
Hi. Welcome. What's up?
You'll have to forgive me, but what was the opening question here? I wasn't exactly sure what. I read the article, but what exactly were we?
Sure. We're just having a wide-ranging discussion launched by the 1993 seminal piece of, I think, NFB literature, one of the really vibrant pieces that stands out for a lot of us, Dr. Kenneth Jernigan's The Nature of Independence. So we're just having a wide-range discussion. So go ahead if you have an observation.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, I'd like to say good evening and thank you for including me in this, because I do have an observation that would have to relate back to my own personal experience. You see, I was born with cerebral palsy and a visual impairment, so I'm not fully blind. What I have is optic nerve atrophy, so I'm legally blind.
Sure. So you're blind.
So
go ahead.
So this actually relates to me because there were more than a few times when I was a college student where I would just, I wouldn't let, my lack of eyesight or lack thereof, stop me from doing things. There'd be times where I'd be, out in the middle of a crowd after class, and I'm unable to reach my nursing assistant because I didn't have a phone at the time, and my parents weren't around. I was on campus. I lived on campus when I was young. When I was in college. So if I didn't have a phone, thankfully now I do. But back in the day when I didn't have a cellular phone, I would just grab somebody off the. I would literally just pull somebody out of the crowd. I would just wait for the exact moment, and then in the loudest voice I could, "Excuse me, please. I need some help down here."
Nice. That's one. Thank you for sharing. Thanks for sharing the story. And I'm glad you're with us, man. That's good. Good. I mean, whatever works. I'm not sure I would do that myself, but I might. Whatever works for people. I'll tell you what. Someone said to me, maybe it was even last Thursday on the call that we lost, Tina. I think someone said, well, if you don't know where the soap dispenser is or the lines for the store, yell out, "Hey, where is it?"
Yep.
So there you go. What's next, Kev?
Scott.
Okay, who's after him? Good, Scott.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting topic, and I guess I want to focus maybe a little on the words, however you want to structure them or phrase them, but the notion of, without inconvenience or with little inconvenience to
Sure.
yourself or others. And for me, and I just would be interesting, it'd be interesting to see what people think. The idea of where does the role of self-responsibility play in this? In other words, if you are a blind person that is capable of learning some independent travel, yet you insist upon with a sighted guide all the time, and sometimes, in some cases, demand that you have a sighted guide all the time, yet you are capable of learning some independent travel and going yourself in some situations, do we have any obligation to, help brothers and sisters who either have skills and don't use them, or maybe don't have the skills but could learn them? Do we have any obligation to nudge people along to help push them along, or do we just say, look, that's the choice, whoever is made, and live with it?
Okay, I have an opinion on that, but I've got an opinion on everything. So let's see if anybody.
Yes, you do.
So let's see if anybody else wants to answer that. In other words, what is our personal responsibility? Or is it reasonable to say, well, yeah, I mean, I know I can do a few things, but gosh, if I can get somebody at the airport, even if it's only gate 11 to gate 10, I'm going to get somebody. Or I'm going to have a note taker, even though I probably could do it on the Braille note. Do we have any personal responsibility or obligation? And if we do, what is the stake? Or if we don't, what are the stakes?
So this is Curtis Chong, and I've been unmuted, I guess. So I think the concept of self-responsibility wasn't explicitly stated that much in the nature of independence, but
but it really was, though.
Yeah, well, implicit. Yeah. If you look at it, there's one paragraph in there that stands out to me, having to do with you can have all the skills in the world, but a slave who is literate and smart and articulate is still a slave, and that resonated with me because it says something about who is in charge of my independence. Is it somebody else, or is it me? Which is not, by the way, to say that I support the notion of somebody who goes around depending on other people 24 hours a day, so much so that, for example, the people that provide the assistance eventually get to feel like they don't want to do it because it's a real drag for them. If such a situation occurs, in the case of a single person who happens to be blind, and the people from whom that person gets a lot of help begin to resent it, therein lies a different kind of problem of independence, having to do with exploitation. And maybe I carry the self-responsibility piece of this a bit further because that's the kind of person that I am. And when I say this, I'm not recommending that everybody else do exactly what I do. But I do think that there is a dimension of self-responsibility, and that there is a question of, I think, the convenience question. That is to say, if I get somebody's help and it's a minor inconvenience for them to do it, and it's a minor inconvenience for me to ask for it because it gets me someplace I need to go more quickly, I think that's perfectly fine. But if it's a major inconvenience, or if, let's say that I have to go somewhere, or, and I know we're focusing on travel, but any task that you want to do in
Sure.
life applies here, that you have to accomplish a task and you lack so little skill that you cannot accomplish that task without a tremendous amount of help from other people. Therein lies a problem as well that needs to be gently but firmly talked about. And I I think that at the core of this discussion is all about what is what are society's expectations and what are our expectations? And I really mean, I use that word advisedly, expectations. What do we really expect from somebody who is blind as a society that's different from what we expect from somebody who is not blind? And therein lies a huge difference if we face this issue head on. People who are seen primarily as blind, right? I mean, in other words, when you look at somebody who happens to be blind, and if the first thing you think about is the fact that they're blind, as opposed to the fact that they're Jewish or Chinese or short or tall or overweight, then you're going to judge everything they do and what you expect them to do around the characteristic of blindness. And if your notions about blindness are really bad, and you don't expect anything, you'll never expect a blind child to be literate. You'll never expect a blind person to use technology with the same competence and proficiency as somebody who's sighted. You'll never expect a blind person to get somewhere in a way that puts them in charge of how they get there. And that's a theme that we in the Federation have been after for a very long time, is elevating the expectations about blindness, not only in our own minds, but in the minds of everybody else.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I also think it fits our Philosophy Fridays. You think about it, we have now done, we're not done here yet, we're going to get other people's opinions, but we have now done handicap or characteristic relatively earlier in our development. We've done Live the Life You Want, most recent, and while we are doing Nature of Independence. And I think there's a continuum of growth in our thinking, in our organizational thinking, our group think, our cultural orientation. I think there's been an evolution of understanding, but I don't think we've ever lost the basic foundation of who we are. And I think that's exciting over 80 years. Who else do we have that wants to respond to any of this, including Scott's idea of, and Curtis, of what is our personal responsibility in all of this? By the way, I think it changes over life real quick. There was a time in my life when I would reject any kind of assistance. I can do it all by myself. Now, I'll tell you what, if I'm walking with Jessica and she says, Kev, grab on, I can get you through here quicker, you daggone right. I want to get to the buffet line quicker, baby. So who else do we have?
Cody Bear.
Cody.
Hi, everybody. Kind of try not to reiterate everything that Curtis said, but kind of going back to that point of personal responsibility. I think, well, first of all, say, and I've been involved in the NFB for going on 10 years now, and had to read the Nature of Independence as an assignment for, I think it was the student division when I was in the student division. And for those who haven't read it, it's a really good speech, and it really helped me to understand NFB philosophy better than anything else I've ever read. So going back to the comments about personal responsibility, I think personal responsibility is implied. I think that as blind people, we have personal responsibility for the decisions that we make. So for example, if I'm at an airport and I miss my flight because I use help, it's not the people that helped me responsibility that I missed my flight, but more so my responsibility for not making the correct decision. I think that said, personal responsibility is kind of implied in everything that we do. We have to be responsible to make the decision that's right for us at the given time that we need to make a decision.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I'll tell you what's really troubling and what actually hurts my heart. I saw an email I think it was an email, one of our students at the Colorado Center for the Blind who's had to go home really would like to continue practicing so many of the skills and building the confidence, but he's in a living situation that he had to go back to, which is what he was trying to escape by going to the center and being involved in the federation. But he's back in a situation where he has loved ones who just don't get it, and almost to the point where they're mean, almost like he's in a cage. And he would like to experience greater independence. And boy, that breaks my heart when we got a blind person who would like to learn and be engaged in life and take on some personal responsibility, but somehow a piece of our society has trapped them. And I'm so glad when we'll get back open and we can help him and other folks. Other comments, Kev? Sorry, maybe I've sidetracked there, but it was on my heart, baby.
We have Sheila Leegland.
Hi, Sheila.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
We can.
Okay. A couple of things. When I first heard that speech, I was involved in the Federation, but we had an affiliate that was probably 75% anti-NFB in our state at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And someone kept saying to me, this is not what the Federation is. And I didn't understand what that meant until I went to National for the first time, and I began to understand what that meant. I also was totally shocked when I called the National office and Kenneth Jernigan answered the phone. And I was like, he's a former president of the Federation, and this man answers the phone. I mean, I knew his voice instantly. I knew who it was. And I was like, you answered the phone? And he's like, well, yeah. And I'm like, oh, I didn't expect that. But also, when I went back to Maryland after our new affiliate was formed here in 2012, and John Perret asked me to stay, I never thought I would be staying there for a week and doing anything specific, because I just didn't expect it. And when I found out there was a board meeting there that same week, I was like, oh God, get me out of here. I don't belong here. And I found out that these people at the national office and who were on the board got up and did things just the way I got up and did things. Maybe they were board members, but I didn't have to be different than them, because I was just some woman from Montana that didn't know nearly enough about the Federation as I wanted to know. But what it taught me was that whether you're from Montana or wherever it is you're from, you can belong to this organization, and you can be an active part of it, and you can be a fully functioning part of it. And it doesn't matter if you're getting older. Like now I use a walker because my knees bother me. When I went to the National last year, and I was afraid to go because I knew people might look at me like, oh my God, she can't get where she wants to go by herself. She can't do this. And the simple fact is I felt very included. I felt very wanted. And it boosted my confidence to understand that the characteristic of blindness is not the only thing that matters. Yeah. And that what matters is that we still go and we still do and we be who we are.
Absolutely.
Thank you. That's awesome. That is so. Now, let me ask you this. Is there really a 2-dot Montana?
She's already down there.
She's down.
Yeah.
All right. So there may be. I do know that we're going to start a town in Colorado. I saw that the other day that we're thinking about launching 6-dot Colorado. Scott?
Yeah, I hope that in 6-dot Colorado there's full cell coverage.
Sure. Oh.
Well,
I'll tell you one thing. All the signs are going to be in Braille.
Yes, absolutely. And it's been an interesting journey in the Federation for me. I think when I first joined, there were elements of the NFB, people who would be rather judgmental about the way other people did things. They used a cane improperly, or they weren't a good traveler, or they didn't use Braille and they always relied on sight, or they used to be a good cane traveler, but now they're using a dog. And I noticed that this person got on the plane when they did pre-boarding. They shouldn't have pre-boarded. And I worried about that, because that's not a way to build an organization. And I think there is a way to help people realize that perhaps there are better ways that they can approach certain situations, and that there are some skills and confidence that they can gain, but also do it without being judgmental and without being we've got to create an atmosphere of love and acceptance. And I think it's a lot easier to nudge people along when you create that atmosphere, as opposed to, I guess the word I was looking for is shaming people. You should never be in the business of shaming somebody because of the way they do a certain thing. I think that's very important, because I think that's one of the myths about the NFB sometimes, that you have to be a super blind person. No, you don't. Some people are great travelers with their dog or their cane. Some people aren't and will never be. My wife's a good traveler, but she is incredibly challenged with respect to, cardinal directions and street systems and all of that. Anyway, I just wanted to make that point, that we really should create an atmosphere of love and acceptance, but also still have the ability to give ourselves and give each other a little nudge from time to time.
Yeah, that's right. It's really a balance. And, Dr. Jernigan talked about that a little bit in the speech, actually a couple of paragraphs where he was talking about, you go through stages, this whole emotional thing. I can't remember, one of you guys will remember, but he had CFI, FFI, and IFI. But essentially it said, you're going to have this, when you first start training, you first start with our philosophy, you're going to struggle. And then the next phase, you kind of get rebellious. In fact, he said that. And I spent quite a bit of time in that rebellious stage where I said, don't touch me. I can do it myself. I don't want you. And then you get into, I guess, what you could refer to really as understanding the nature of independence. You can live the life you want stage. And so for me, and I think the organization's that way. I totally disagree with Dr. Jernigan's almost everything he wrote in his 1995 article about guide dogs. He can say that he was an anti-guide dog, but if you read the article, and we talked about that on one of these calls, and we can talk about it again, but you take a look where the Federation is now. It is both, and I said this earlier, it's still rooted in our real substance, values, and philosophy, but it is broader in many ways. And that's because we gather more people, and people have their own opinions that influence where we are. Okay, Kev, who's next?
So I'm going to just jump in real quick and say that I kind of got involved in the NFB and was around the Alcoholics Anonymous community at the same time. I'm not an alcoholic, but my dad is an alcoholic and addict. And one of the things that they say in AA is that if you stick around, you'll see people and you'll do things because you'll want the life that they have. You'll see people emulating a way that you want to be. So it's not necessary to shame people, and it's not necessary to judge people for for the way that they choose to travel, or for the amount of responsibility that they might or might not take for themselves. But by emulating what it's like to live as a blind person who lives independently in the way that you can best live independently, and you have a successful and thriving life, you make other people want that. And I think also another piece to that is that our greatest independence comes through community. And whether that means the community of people around us who help us do things physically, like maybe offering sighted guide or offering assistance to grocery stores, or whether that means the community of mentors around us that help us to greater levels of skill and ability so that we can do more things for ourselves. So I think community is also a really big part of the nature of independence, and I'm glad that I have our community.
Yeah, that's really beautiful, Jess, to be honest with you. I mean, and Mark Riccobono has said this. He said it on the call we were talking about. You can live the life you want. Much of who we are is aspirational, right? Some of the philosophy we articulate, some of it we can embody. But remember, we still have the constraints of the overall view of society that sometimes weighs us down, as Scott referred to his afternoon work tonight. So some of it's earlier today. So some of it really is aspirational. And the notion of community, I do want to open it up to others, Kev, but I was thinking about that this afternoon. You know, we live outside the Federation in our other lives, whether we're working through the Christian church or the Jewish church or the mosque or the Lions Club or our employment or social media. We live in a tough time with COVID-19. We live in a divisive time. And yet, you know, Brian Smith and Jeanette Fortin and we're diametrically opposed on so many things, but we still love each other in the Federation. We still have that community. And I think that's a huge thing that we have together in this National Federation of the Blind. Because when it's all said and done, one of the cool things we have in common is blindness and visual impairment and the need to work together in a civil rights movement. That's pretty cool. That's pretty special. Who else do we have, Kevin?
Chelsea Page.
Oh, nice. Go ahead, Chelsea.
Good evening. So whenever I think about the speech, I think of whenever I found the NFB back in 2006. And of course, I was in high school at the time, and I was not blind. I was in major denial, which, I mean, I was, but I didn't see it that way.
Right.
And so I look at this independence piece, and fast forward to now, I am a teacher of blind students, and I am all the time telling my students, and from the time they're, you know, that I get them and they are on my caseload, I'm like, okay, you're going to be held to the same expectations as your peers are. You know, because I'm going to make sure that, you know, Lord willing, you're going to have the tools in your toolbox to be able to do things as a blind student. And whenever I think about the part about the where, you know, with little inconvenience, not at all, I think, okay, so many times whenever, you know, our children are being taught in school, they're taught that, you know, you have to be inconvenienced by the lunch line, and so you got to go, you get to take the back way, so that way you're not convenienced by that. And those expectations are so much lower. We would just raise those expectations for these people.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. Oh my goodness, thank you for that influence you're having on our kiddos and also on your fellow teachers and administrators who will say, yeah, let the kids go here, let them go first, right? Well, you know, at some point they're going to have to go along with everybody else and deal with the rough and tumble of it. So let's not overprotect. So the nature of independence, going where you want, at least in travel and mobility, going where you want, when you want, with as little inconvenience to yourself and others, which I think is pretty much says it. Kev, others?
9809, phone number 9809.
9809. Who's this?
Yeah. So
who is this?
So many things that have been talked about, and there's just a lot.
Wait. Tell me who this is, please.
Darian.
Oh, Darian again.
Darian.
Okay. Next.
I'm sorry, Kevin.
Go ahead, Darian.
So many things we talked about, and I think just talking about the fact that our core is the same.
Yeah.
How we start to look at things and how we examine things has evolved some, and that being important, and helping people to understand, hey, look, that maybe what you saw before, maybe you remember the organization 10 years ago, or you went to a convention, you're like, no, this isn't for me. To come back and go, well, wow, this is different. Yeah, it feels different because we think different, because this organization is an organization made of people. People naturally evolve in how they think and how they feel about things, and they challenge that way. That's one thing that's important. You mentioned earlier the stages of blindness, and I remember, going through training, leaving after training, and sort of taking what I learned from training literally into life as that was. And eventually, I think what did it for me was reading The Nature of Independence. Actually, I know that's what did it for me. And going, and thinking about something, Dr. Jernigan said something along the lines of, hold your head high, but basically be proud. Not simply because you have a cane, not simply because you use a dog, not simply because you use it. No, these are the tools, not the trappings. These are the things that allow you to do it. Doesn't mean that doesn't, them of themselves don't make you independent. These are the things that help you to do it. I remember being in an interview, and the interview was talking about something around working with others, and I said something like, I used to not like asking for help. I used to be I will figure it out. That's just it. I will do it. I don't care how long it takes. And it's good to have that in your arsenal to be able to go back to it. But I said, I read this speech, and I literally mentioned the speech by the guy, Dr. Jernigan. It was called The Nature of Independence. I summarized what it was, and I said what it did for me was it showed me that there are different ways to go about doing the same thing, and that you can leverage what makes sense in the moment. And so I feel that, we all are in the point where we're not going to do, where we're not alone, and we're going to be helping each other out and going through things and navigating things. And I mentioned that through the interview. Interestingly enough, I did get the job.
All right. Well, I can understand that. You've worked for you, and you worked for me years ago, so I'm sure you did. Darren, I also want to thank you. You've been working with us on our inclusion opportunity programs in the National Federation of Blind in Colorado, and also I would say that you and I were working together in San Francisco. I don't know that anybody understood that BARD system better than you did. So thank you. Who else do we have, Kevin?
Kira.
Oh, great. Hi, Kira.
Hello, am I unmuted?
Hi.
Yep.
You're unmuted.
Cool.
Otherwise, I couldn't hear you.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm hilarious.
Yeah, you're awesome.
Go ahead.
I think we've talked before. Anyway, I was just thinking, I've been thinking about just listening to everything, and us talking about, the whole self-responsibility and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
When I joined the Federation, or when I first my first experience with the Federation was Youth Slam. I can't remember what it's called now.
Slam that.
Yeah. Slam that. Good times. And I had sort of felt like, because I hadn't really been introduced to the philosophy yet, and I didn't really know what I was doing, and I felt like people were trying to shame me because I didn't quite understand it. So I was turned off by it. Now you know, being on these calls and because I was also part of the NFB of Tennessee as well when I was there, and you know, that was like, oh, I don't have to be this super blind person, you know.
Right.
And of course now, you know, as an adult and finding people who are supportive and everything, it's like I actually want to learn some of those techniques, and that's why I've been taking part in these calls and everything. And so it's really nice to see that, you know, people do still accept help sometimes.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. You know, we're glad you came out of Tennessee. We don't usually get very many competent, capable people that come out of Tennessee.
Yeah, it's few and far between, right?
Yeah, we hardly ever find one of those. So we're certainly, other than Dr. Jernigan, you know, we just don't have very many. But Kara, thank you very much for that. That's awesome. Who else do we have, Kev?
Pippi.
Oh,
Hi,
great.
everyone.
Hi, Pip.
Hi. So I've been wanting to say lots of things throughout the conversation, but I guess I started off, I have RP, so, you know, I've been losing my vision, and I grew up as visually impaired, I'm kind of clumsy, visually retarded, I called myself at one time because I thought it was funny, and now it is terrible. But
VR, Pippi. That's VR. That's not so go ahead.
My little sister also has RP, and her vision has always been worse than mine. And she went to CCB before I did, probably almost 10 years before I did.
Wow.
And I remember, like, I had more vision than her, so, you know, I was better off than her. And it took me realizing that I was losing more vision and couldn't be independent as I thought, and seeing that, you know, she still had less vision than me, but was doing it on her own. And I was still living in Hicksville, Kansas, you know, not doing anything without, you know, sighted guide or, you know, shuffling my feet so that I didn't trip over things. And it also took Savannah, my daughter, and me being afraid to walk her to preschool without, you know, tripping over something, and realizing that between my little sister and Savannah that I wasn't independent, and it wasn't like, it didn't matter how much vision I had, like I wasn't an independent person. And so it took that for me to come to Colorado to CCB. And I remember, you know, meeting people like Maureen and Mo and all the other wonderful staff members there at CCB at the time, and like, this is what I want. So kind of going back to Jessica mentioning community, and I'm like, I want to be independent like them. And I remember the first time that I heard Dr. Jernigan's speech, and it really, it hit home for me, realizing that, you know, I didn't have to be the super blind person to be considered independent, and I didn't have to be the militant NFB member that's all I ever heard about growing up in Hicksville. And, you know, I don't have to be perfect, and nobody's perfect, and that's not what being independent means. And another comment, like going back to kind of Scott said something, and Maureen also, I guess I think of, how do we know when to nudge our friends, and how do we know what is a blindness independence thing or something else? You know, because Maureen mentioned, you know, that has other characteristics, as we all do, other than blindness. And I think of a few friends of mine recently who were discussing one night that they had no toilet paper, and, you know, they're not leaving their home, and how are they going to get toilet paper? It's, you know, 7:30 at night. And just in my head, I was thinking, I was judging them. I'm like, why aren't they calling, you know, the number, and why aren't they reaching out to people? And I stopped myself. I'm like, you know what, like, everybody is different, and I don't know why they're not doing it, and it doesn't matter. So like, I offered, I'm like, hey, I have a friend who can bring you toilet paper. Do you guys know about the, you know, our hotline, things like that. And just stopping to think, like, maybe it's not a blindness thing, and even if it is, maybe they, you know, they don't have the skills. But I guess my question with that is how can we lovingly nudge people who, you know, aren't doing it because of some reason, I guess.
And well, first of all, you know, I've seen your growth. I just have to say, and I hope you don't mind. I think I first met you at maybe the Kansas convention, if I remember right. But I have seen your growth, and it's admirable. It does my heart good. And I think really that's the key. You just have to role model people. You have to, Jessica and I we've sort of coined this phrase, you have to love people into the Federation. We've done a lot of organizing, and we do love, and I think you love people with your expectations. You know, one time someone said, well, how are you so successful in business? I said, the National Federation of the Blind. Everything I've ever learned about business, about connections, about speaking, has come from the National Federation. I had role models like Jim Gashel. How could you look to Jim Gashel and not know I can be a success too? I can compete, I can participate, and I can do it on my own terms. I don't have to do it on Jim Gashel's terms. And so, Pippi, I think it's a matter of just reaching people, loving people. You know, I would say hugging people, but I guess you have to do. A couple of my good buddies who are 6 and 8 years old were in the yard yesterday, and they said, virtual hug, Mr. Worley, virtual hug. So 6 feet away. Thank you, Pippi. Who's next?
We've got Dan Burke.
And before
Hello, this is Dan Burke. How is everybody?
So Julie, I don't know if you were on, but I quoted you earlier, so I hope you heard.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes. So I just want to say that, you know, I think that we need to get people just to know us really, really well and to understand that none of us are super blind people. And I'm going to give an example. As a director of the center, we had just opened, and I actually fell into a little drainage ditch, and I sprained my ankle. And for this day on, it's called the ankle biter ditch. And I'm the one that sprained my ankle in that ditch. And I was sure to tell everybody that I was the one that did that. And I think that, you know, that's what the NFB is all about, is all of us as leaders as well, you know, talking with everybody. And we all do that. And that's why I think we all love the NFB so much. The nature of independence is one of the most very controversial speeches, as we've already discussed, that I think was ever given. And I had the pleasure of being at the convention and hearing the uproar following the convention. And I was with a lot of center students who were irate. I was around Louisiana, Colorado, and I remember going to lunch with people, and they were so upset. And then as we talked through it all, I think people understood. But I think the key for all of us, you know, is to, as blind people, is to be able to gain confidence, for people to have confidence and belief in themselves as blind people. And part of doing that is pushing ourselves and challenging ourselves. And, you know, training really makes a difference in that way so much. And we do push and challenge our students. And we challenge each other as members in the NFB, but I think we do it now more than ever in a loving way, as we've been discussing tonight. But I just wanted to bring it up. We have this for philosophy class at least twice a year, and it's so fun. We did it tonight. So thanks.
Thank you. Oh, thanks, Julie. Pop in anytime. You know, of course I answered the phone. Of course I did. What's wrong with you people? So it's interesting that it was sort of controversial at the time. You know, in the speech, Dr. Jernigan talks about the fact that, you know, when you're in training, you're going to be under sleep shades. You're going to be using your cane. You're going to be reading that Braille, you know, for an hour, 2 hours a day. You're going to be doing that. Once you get out of training, man, you know, live the way you want to live. I mean, he talks, you know, he goes into that pretty. The other thing he talks about that I love is this notion of standing on each other's shoulders, right? So if we keep faith with the Federation, with our next generation, they'll even be more independent. no matter how you decide, to define it, they'll be probably more independent than many of us are. I don't even know what our time frame is, Kev, but do we have other folks?
Yeah, we've got a handful more here.
And I just want to also throw in there that, Kira, we do love people from Tennessee because both myself and Kevin Kovacs are from Tennessee. And yeah.
Okay, mute her. Kev, can you mute her? Mute her on down. Please. Great. She is a mutant, is what she is. All right, go ahead.
Jody.
Oh, Jody.
Hi, everyone. It's Jody. So I have a couple of things just to piggyback, and I'll try to do this quickly. So I agree wholeheartedly with Julie that building that confidence either through training or for those of us, so for instance, when I lived in Southern Illinois, DVR in Illinois thought that 3 hours of O&M training for someone who just went blind was sufficient for 6 months at a time. So 3 hours. And that was when I was going to college. So a lot of it was up to me, and I was terrified. I had anxiety about it, specifically traveling, right? So getting out there and doing it will help build your confidence. It helps you adjust a little bit, but, doing that safely as well. And so really that personal responsibility, I think the best way to learn that within ourselves is to do it. Whether it be cooking, traveling, anything that we learn how to do, sighted or non-sighted, just trying it out. And really, that's how you learn when you know that you need to ask for help. Piggybacking off of what Cody said earlier, Cody's taught me a lot about independence traveling in an airport. To this day, he will say, I get very ugly in an airport. And there again, it's that anxiety of, oh my gosh, we have to catch this flight. We have to be there. When we get there in plenty of time, that subsides quite a bit. But there's also a difference when I'm trying to go from gate 10 to 11. I have a hot Starbucks coffee in my hand that's burning my hand. And Cody is trying to be independent where I'm like, let's ask the first person we find because my hand's on fire and I need to get to a seat. So I think just trying it out, trying it different ways. In the past, I've definitely had sighted guides through an airport. I've had a personal assistant. I've had my mom take me. And honestly, I still like my mom to take me just so I can hug her at the gate, right? But finding that confidence within ourselves is just, for me at least, it was a way of just trying it out, trying what I could do and seeing how it went. So
yeah, I agree with that. I've gone through airports so many different ways in my life, and it's whatever works best for you. I used to never take assistance. Now, if I need assistance, I take it. I mostly don't, because the reason I don't, though, is I enjoy trying to figure it out, which is odd with my anxiety. But there are times now where I got an hour and a half in O'Hare Airport. I'm sure I can figure out a way to get from C7 to B9. I'm sure I can. And then there are times, and I pre-board. I always pre-board. I didn't used to. I never did. And I know a lot of my colleagues that don't. It's all good. I think my position is that I can do it with greater independence because it is with least inconvenience to myself or others, which I kind of dig. Who's next, Kev?
We've got phone number 1892.
1892.
Hello, this is Debbie Brown from Maryland.
Hi, Debbie. Welcome back.
Yes. So my thinking is, I think that there's a message in this for like parents and teachers that independence is kind of a holistic kind of thing. It's what you do with your life. I remember in some speech that you made, Ruby Ryle said, you're not teaching Braille, you're teaching your child to read using Braille.
Yeah.
So that's those skills. I mean, I've heard people rack up, I got this, I can read Braille and some outlandish number of words per minute. But their accomplishments don't always measure up. And then some people who do not have all those skills, but what they do have, they use. I've seen people with a tape recorder keep track of addresses and call a bunch of people. And I use Braille, and that's what I would use. And I think Braille's better, but that person didn't have that and did with what they had better than some of the people. It was when our chapter, I assigned a bunch of new people they were supposed to call, and some of them did know Braille, did have email, did have this, and I sent them out, and they didn't do their job. But one who didn't even have the tape recorder, she had a print, and somebody helped her to read the print, and she did what she was supposed to do, gave me a report of what she had done. So people do, it's what you do, not the skills you are racking up.
There you go. They're absolute stuff. What did you say? The trappings of independence, not the reality of independence. Thank you, Debbie. As always, appreciate you. Who's next, Kev?
Phone number 8436.
8436.
Yes, this is Katie calling. With regard to personal responsibility and how it relates to independence, a person, no matter whether they are blind or not, has to know your limitations and what you need to meet what you need to get over some of those limitations. For example, I have a personal assistant that helps me with things that I cannot do on my own, and I pay her.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. You know, the whole point is you're not inconveniencing someone else. You're enriching someone's life because they have a job, because you're paying them to do things. That's wonderful.
Yeah, you know, my wife, I don't know, some folks on here know, my wife is extremely ill. We don't make a deal out of it, but she's been very, very, very sick for a couple of years. We are very, very fortunate that we have Jessica around quite a bit to help. But one of our folks who works as a bookkeeper is also very close to Bridget. We pay her, but I don't know how we do it without Karen. So everybody's circumstance is different. The cool thing is we're all together under the umbrella of the National Federation of the Blind, and we can all spend some time helping to do that work to help the next generation find their independence. Anyone else, Kev?
Chelsea Cook.
Oh, Chelsea, hi.
Hello. Yay. My hand's been raised for a while. So I actually lowered it and then re-raised it. And I'm like, oh, maybe I'll get to the front of the queue. Oh,
There's just a bunch, yeah.
You're in there.
No worries. I'm looking at the time and I'm going, oh, geez, this might be a bigger question that I have. But
go ahead, Chelsea.
In regards to the blind shaming and super blind, my parents raised me very independently. And then I found the Federation fairly early, so I adopted the super blind kind of to a fault. But I always, and even though I live in Colorado, I'm about to maybe make a bunch of enemies, particularly if Julie is still on. Hopefully she won't, lead a mob to the light rail station and, have torches and pitchforks. But I always got the idea because I had some skills that were really good, and I was going to college and stuff. But every time the question of a center would be brought up, I always got the idea that oh, if you don't go to the center for a full program, you're not as good a blind person. And that really bothered me. I don't know. I think it's changing, which is very good news. Or it might have just been something that I internalized as a person. But I always kind of got that sort of impression. And then the other thing I would say definitely going on what Maureen and then what Scott and others have said about personal responsibility. I think kind of knowing how to ask for help and knowing that it's okay to ask for help is a skill that the Federation also needs to teach. I'll give you two examples. Just one in the fact of when I started struggling with some mental health issues of my own, that was really hard. Part of it was I didn't want two stigmas, although I got it anyway. And part of it was, when I first started to feel not so great, that just increased as like, oh, I'm not a great blind person because I'm doing X, when in reality it was something totally different. And then the final example I'll give during the pandemic just happened to me this week. One of my friends from the Boulder poetry community posted something about one of the food rescue pantries in Denver. And I sort of semi joked. I'm like, hey, do they, drive up? Do they allow you to walk up with a grocery cart too? And I was kind of half joking and kind of not. But the person, they texted me and they said, hey, look, I do this for, other families. I'll just come and bring you some stuff. And I said, okay, are you sure? And she's like, yes. And we got there and we got putting stuff away. And I think I kept trying to like come up with things to sort of repay her. And she stopped me and she's like, look, this is not a transaction. We do this because we love you. And I really, that's hard sometimes, just because, I was always taught to not inconvenience people. but then again as well, I mean, for me to go to the place, yeah, I would have been able to do it, but it would have been, an hour each way and half a mile walk besides. So I was very grateful that they were able to go.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Chelsea. I appreciate it. Well, first of all, you actually did that person a favor, and it was transactional in a way. They got a great deal of appreciation and love from you, and I'm sure someone gave them favors and love from the heart and helped them. So we pay it forward. That's a sort of a expression we use nowadays, but it's not trite, it's real. And then the second thing I said, let's go back to the very first. I think that because we believe so strongly in the National Federation of the Blind, and we believe it, we believe in that philosophy, we believe in helping people. Sometimes we do kind of put the little extra nudge, like, come on, go to the center, it'll be good for you. Come on, Mikey, you eat it, it'll be good for you. And then we internalize that and we start looking at it. So I think it's part of both. And it is easy for some of us who have anxiety and other issues to internal things that weren't even meant or said. So I think it's kind of in that middle. I mean, that's my sense.
Tim, can I respond to that just really quickly?
Go, Jess.
So I want to just say really quick that I never went through a center program.
Been meaning to talk to you about that, actually.
Yeah, no, but I think that what I've experienced since I've been here, Chelsea, is that I meet a lot of proud graduates, right? Because a lot of people who did graduate from the center are from here in Colorado, and so I think they're just so excited about what they've gotten that people are just excited to spread the wealth sometimes, and they don't understand how it might make somebody feel maybe that doesn't have the opportunity because A, they don't want it because they've already gotten skills a different way, or B, maybe because they didn't have time, maybe they were working or had other things going on in their life and they didn't have that same opportunity, or they weren't from a state that that was the prominent mode of training. And so I think there's a lot of reasons. I think that anytime it's ever been suggested to me, it has never been a thing where somebody was trying to make me feel like I was less because I didn't have the opportunity to do it. But I can definitely understand how it might feel that way. Although I would just say I think most often it comes from a good place.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that's right. Okay, do we have any other folks, Kev?
Diana.
Diana?
Yes, hi. Am I unmuted?
Yep, you are indeed.
Oh, okay. Hi, I'm calling you guys from Miami, Florida. For the moment, I'm living here, but I'm moving to Virginia. And anyway, so I like your meetings. So that's I try to join every time I can.
Thank you.
And you're welcome. As a matter of fact, I have a very good friend of mine is a godmother of one of my sons. She lives in Denver, but they are not, they're fully sighted people. So it's a very wonderful couple. They have 4 children. And when I see you guys, I always remember her. I've been to Denver once, but anyway, what I wanted to say is I caught the presentation in the middle here, so I'm not sure what the thematic is. But we had recently a very good sharing talk with Gary Wander. And he was mentioning the theme was like a Braille Monitor article that he wrote about elite blinds. And that we in the Federation sometimes, regardless of the state we are in, we are considered elite blinds because we have to be perfect and we have to be so independent. And Gary was talking exactly about asking for help and using help when we feel like and we feel that we need to. And we all joined that talk. And for me particularly, in many ways here in Florida at least, I've been, let's say, criticized because I asked for help. I use IRA, which most people do, but they don't tell anybody about it. And Gary was telling exactly the opposite. Says, look, why should I struggle to find the exit door of a restaurant if I can just call Ira and says, where's the door? And just don't bother people. Because of course we have some facilities that many blind people in the past, they didn't have. So
right, that's right. That's absolutely right. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. And I use IRA. I don't use it much. And I know a lot of folks who use IRA and Be My Eyes and dogs and canes and spouses who guide you. And, but I think it really comes down to, though, I don't think that the speech said use every daggone piece of help you can. I don't think it said that. Neither does our philosophy say don't use anything, don't use any human interaction or human. It doesn't say any of that. It's sort of in the middle, and I think that's the balance that we have. But thank you for bringing that point up. I use IRA. I know that some of our buddies on this call use IRA. So I don't think anybody ought to be criticizing anybody for anything, man. It's all about the love. What's next, Kev?
We've got somebody named iPhone.
Oh, iPhone. Hi. Go ahead.
Is it me? Zach Harshbarger?
There you go, Zach. Yeah.
Okay, hello. Hey, first of all, I'd like to thank you guys for hosting these Zoom conference calls in the evenings. I really appreciate it. And what I would add to the topic tonight is me personally and my experience with blindness is and how that might relate to my responsibility or like how the world views me or that characteristic is that I'm not alone. For one, there's a lot of other men and women that are undergoing similar circumstances or dealing with the same challenge as me. But furthermore, that people throughout history or in our recent past have developed skills and techniques to help overcome some of these challenges, and that by learning these skills and techniques through NFB training programs such as the Colorado Center for the Blind, whoop whoop, shout out to Julie Deaton, Dan Burke, and Maureen, and everybody else that's affiliated with that. Love you guys. You guys have really helped my life tremendously. But is that like I can realize that I can learn these techniques and then apply them to my daily life. It's not like I'm just all alone and there's no way around it. It's just like anything else in life, and that if you take the time or are able to and break down each thing, whether it's cooking or cane traveling with a white mobility cane or guide dog. I've recently gotten a guide dog, but all these things you can expand your tool belt and learn how to use any given tool on certain circumstances. But mainly for me, one thing I had to learn about like how my blindness and deals with other people in the community or just people out and about is humbling myself. I personally really had to learn that, instead of being stubborn and kind of like trying to figure it all out by myself at times, that it really is okay to take a deep breath, realize you may be a little disoriented or quote unquote lost, and that it is okay to ask for help or directions, or to use apps and IRA and GPS and anything you can at your disposal. Because at the end of the day, you're better off maybe seeming a little bit vulnerable than coming off rude or just overall mean to somebody, because you are actually uncomfortable with your characteristics personally. So mainly I would just say I had to learn to humble myself, utilize skills and training facilities that were available to me, such as the outstanding Colorado Center for the Blind. And just that's what I would say. But mainly just thank you all for hosting these, and I appreciate it.
Well, I think that's fascinating. I mean, that's really, really, to me, what it's all about. You've almost said the whole deal right there. I don't know that I would say humble myself, although I suppose that's okay too. Maybe because I can still be humble and proud. You know, you can be humble and proud. I would also say there's a book on BARD. I wish I'd have been smart enough to do the research about how you leverage help. This is not for blind people. This is a book that was on BARD that's teaching people how to leverage asking for help. It's a short book, and I'll look it up and I'll mention it next week, because it really helped me to realize, even in my business and my social and my federation work, I tend to think I can do it myself, instead of thinking, wait a minute, Nick could help us do that. And Nick would probably ask somebody else to do that. Now we got 3 people doing it instead of just me. So thank you for those comments. I think they're great. I'm sure that Julie and Dan and the CCB, our community, appreciates it as well. Again, I don't have our time, Kev, but I don't know where we are.
It's about 6:30, and so we got...
Oh, it's that late.
Yeah.
People like this call. Do we have anyone else? Because we're going to wrap this thing. My goodness. Do we have maybe one more comment? If we don't, we're going to go and have happy hour. What do we got, Kev?
Yeah. One more here. We got...
Okay.
We'll go Tina.
Oh, thank you. You know,
Thank
you.
Tina Hansen.
Yes.
You have 30 seconds. Go.
Okay, first off, thank you. This was an excellent call. Since you lost the COVID-19 advocacy seminar, I think it would be a good idea to do another one, just to have something up there. And I liked your mindfulness seminar a couple of weeks ago. I'd like to see another one of those.
Okay.
And about the nature of independence, thank you. I think that hearing this will prompt me to go back and rehear it, because
Good.
Thank you.
Tina, thank you very much. You're a regular caller. We appreciate you and the work you do. Ladies and germs, have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. Thank you for being with us. And I'm now going to go have a Tito's, I think. But let's stay in touch. Don't forget, I need blog articles, and the work of the Federation continues.
Oh,
Cool.
okay. So the only thing that I could think of with my headphone from last night